Hi everyone. In yesterday's video you learned about compound inequalities and how to graph them. So today the next step is going to be solving compound inequalities and then graphing those solutions. Now, just like we did with solving inequalities, this is going to be very familiar and the same steps that we used when we were solving equations. The only thing that happens now is just like before when we were drawing our line through our inequality symbol, now we have two symbols, so we're going to be drawing two lines. So let's just jump in and see how this goes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide up. I basically have three parts to my inequality. And my goal in solving, right, is still to get x by itself. So my goal is still the same. So when I look at this inequality, I can see that my x is in the center. And right now I have plus 5. So I know to get rid of that 5, I have to subtract 5. Now the new piece here is that I have to subtract 5 from both sides here. So I'm going to do it from the middle, I'm going to subtract from the 2, and I'm going to subtract from the 9. So in each of these three sections, I should subtract that 5 in order to keep everything balanced. So if I do that, I have 2 minus 5 is a negative 3. Since I subtracted, my symbol is going to stay the same, so it's still less than. This is going to cancel, which gives me x. And then on this side I have 9 minus 5, which gives me a positive 4. So now I have an and inequality. I know that my kind of boundaries here are negative 3. It's going to be an open circle there. On the right, I have an open circle on the positive 4. And then again, just like x is kind of sandwiched in the middle, my shading is going to be a sandwich in the middle. Okay, let's go. I'm actually going to kind of skip around a little bit here. I want to look at number 4 next. So again, I have a sandwich and inequality because I can see my variable is sandwiched in the middle. So I'm going to start by drawing my two lines. Now, I notice my variable, it's a z this time, but that doesn't change anything. I have this minus 1 that I need to get rid of. So in order to do that, I'm going to add 1. And again, I'm going to add 1 in each of these three sections I created. So now I have negative 3 plus 1. We have to be careful with our signs, and we have a negative 2. Now these cancel, and I still have a less than, because I added. When my 1's cancel, I have a negative z in the middle, less than, and 3 plus 1 gives me 4. So now I'm almost there, but really what I have here is a negative 1 times z. To get z all by itself, I need to divide by a negative 1, which means I do that everywhere. And hopefully you're recognizing now, because we're dividing by a negative 1, we need to flip the inequality symbol. So we're going to do that, and my negative 2 divided by a negative 1 is a positive 2. I have to flip this to a greater than. Here my negative 1's cancel out, and I have z all by itself. I need to flip this symbol as well, and now 4 divided by a negative 1 is a negative 4. Now this should look funny to you because we said these were always going to be less than symbols. We also said that our smaller number should be on the left. So before we graph this, we actually just need to rewrite the inequality so that our negative 4 is on this side, our z is in the middle, and our 2 is on this side. Now, I notice here the pointy end was pointing towards the negative 4, so when I rewrite it, that still has to be true. On this side, the open end was pointing to the 2, and so that still needs to be true. So we've just kind of flipped everything over. And now we can easily graph it. I can see I've got an open circle on negative 4, an open circle on positive 2, and I'm shading everywhere in between. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like when we have an OR inequality. ORs are actually really simple because basically we're just solving two separate simple inequalities. So for the first one, I just ignore this other inequality. We don't even need to kind of look at that for right now. We're just going to focus on our 3h plus 1 is less than -5. So I'm going to draw my line. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. When I do that, I just have 3h left. I have a less than, and -5 minus 1 is a -6. Now I'm going to divide by a +3, and so my 3's are going to cancel. I'll have h is less than -2. Now a lot of people were wanting to flip this inequality because of this negative, but remember we only flip it if the number that we're dividing by is negative. Since we're dividing by a positive, we keep our inequality symbol the same. So to graph that piece, h is less than -2. I have an open circle at -2, and I shade to the left. So now we're just going to do the same thing with this inequality. I'm going to pretend that one's not there, and we're going to solve this inequality. So to do that, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So these cancels. I have 2h is greater than 12. I'm going to divide by 2, and I have h is greater than 6. So my solution here is h is less than -2 or h is greater than 6. I need to make sure to put that or back into my solution, and then I'm going to graph my second inequality. Okay, let's see. We'll do number 6 just for one more. So again, this is an OR, so we're just dealing with two separate inequalities. So to start, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. I'll be left with 4c on the left side is less than or equal to -3 minus 1 is a -4. I can divide divide by 4 on both sides. So that cancels, and I have c is less than or equal to -1. Now I can deal with my second inequality. So I'm going to draw my line, add 3 to both sides. That gives me 5c is greater than 20. Can divide by 5 on both sides, and I know that c is greater than 4. So my solution is c is less than or equal to -1, or c is greater than 4, and then I can graph my two inequalities. So this one I shade to the left, and on this side I'm going to shade to the right. All right, so that is how we solve compound inequalities. Now there's one last piece to this. So if we flip over, the last thing we need to be able to do is translate before solving and graphing. And we've done a little bit with translating, but now we have to be careful because we're going to have multiple operations in these new inequalities. Now, when I'm translating, the first thing I'm going to do is look and see if I have an and or an or. So in number 9, I see 3 times x is less than -6, and it's greater than -21. Now, I know it's going to look like this. There's going to be something in between, and it's sandwiched between two values. Now, we said our smaller value should go first, so I'm going to have a -21. On my other side, I have a -6, and now in between, we have to deal with this 3 times x. I know 3 times x is just translated as 3x, and so now I've got my inequality and I just need to solve it. So we're going to go ahead, draw our two lines. To get x by itself, I need to divide by 3. And now again, because I'm dividing by a positive 3, I do not flip my inequality. So I have negative 7 is less than x, which is less than negative 2, and I can graph that. Negative 2, and again, sandwiched in between. Just like that x is in between, my shading should be in between. All right, last problem for today. So I have 1 less than x is less than negative 1, or 3 more than x is greater than or equal to 7. So let's take this in two pieces. Here I have 1 less than x is less than negative 1. Now, I know 1 less than x. It really means I'm taking 1 away from x. So I translate that as x minus 1 is less than negative 1. Then we have our word or. Then I have 3 more than x. So 3 more than x, I know, is 3 plus x, is greater than or equal to 7. So now our translating work is done and we can solve and graph. So I'm going to draw my line through. I'm going to add 1 to both sides. When I do that, I get x is less than 0. On this side, in order to get x by itself, I need to subtract the 3. And I have x is greater than or equal to 4. So my solution is x less than 0, or x is greater than or equal to 4. All right, so I know there's a lot going on here. Obviously, when we get back to class, you'll have time to practice with all of this. See you then.